Hi everyone, in this episode we discuss The Batman. We don't think we spoiled too much, but be aware, if you haven't seen the film yet and you want to go in completely fresh, maybe add this one to the queue and listen to it after you see the movie. We good? Alright, enjoy the show.
You going?
Mm-hmm.
Right, okay. So I asked you to press play in the middle of this, what one might describe fateful discussion, because I feel like the listeners might have an opinion on this. So we were having a discussion about whether or not I've got what Johnny calls a cold open and what I call a pre-bit. So this discussion is about the different sections of the podcast and what they're called. He said the bits of the bits, and I got very confused.
The pre-bit is the bit before we watch the movie. The cold open is this bit, which we're doing now.
Okay.
And then there's the intro.
I know that this is called the cold open, but I also call the cold open the pre-bit. If you look through my sort of notes...
So here's where you're getting confused, is that you're confusing things.
No, I think that you've confused me because you say pre-bit all the time, and I think you mean the cold open. So really, this is your fault.
No, the pre-bit is before the movie.
So run through this for me.
Yes.
We've got... how do we start? What's the structure? We've got cold open, which I'm supposed to be providing now.
That you're providing now.
Right.
Okay. And then we have the intro.
Right, which comes right after the main sequence, the opening sequence.
Which comes after the theme, yes,
okay.
the jingle, whatever.
Right. Yep.
Okay, and then we have context.
Okay. And so context isn't part of the intro. That's a different bit.
The intro is the bit where I try and say something funny.
But is context what you would also call the pre-bit?
Yes.
See? Do you see? You're the problem because you call multiple things. You're like those people who use the same word for many different things.
Well, context is part of the pre-bit.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Okay, what else is part of the pre-bit? What falls under the banner of pre-bit?
That's it.
That just
pre-bit,
so
the pre-bit is
it could just be called context.
It could just be called context, but we said pre-bit a couple of times and it just sort of stuck. But it doesn't necessarily have to be called the pre-bit. It could just be called context.
The pre-bit, and then there's the watching the movie.
The watching the movie,
right?
Yep.
And then what? And then what? The body of the podcast.
Yes.
What do you call that? You call it the body?
Well, I mean, yes, there's the body, and we have all the games and all that kind of stuff that sort of crop up in different places every episode.
And then the outro.
And
at the end.
Yeah, the summation. Yeah.
Summation. That's what you call it, the summation?
Well, I don't know, whatever.
Really glad that we were able to clear this up because there's no way that I'm following this. Roll that intro, please. What's our seat number?
Hello, and welcome to What's Our Seat Number, the show that asks questions like, why is the rum gone? I'm Johnny Gross, a filmmaker, a podcaster, and an aspiring tree surgeon. With me, as always, is my co-host, a 3D graphic artist, the third grumpy old man, assistant to the regional manager. In high school, he was voted as man most destined to tell people to get out of his train. It's Simon Gross.
That's actually true, that last one.
Indeed. Today, we're going to be talking about... what's this word?
The
Batman.
Can I ask you, have you put in brackets there, quote, Dumb and Dumber, or what?
No, I've just written, today we're going to be talking about, ... wait, comma, what's this word? The Batman.
You actually wrote it out. Brilliant.
Yes, of course I did.
Keep going.
I say that before we get into the nitty of the gritty of the Batman, let's go...
Wait, is it called The Body, or is it called The Nitty of the Gritty? Because you've thrown in another...
Don't overanalyze it.
All right, go on.
Okay. I think we should head over to the news desk for some movie news. Okay, so this isn't exactly news, but something that I discovered this week. There is a movie in existence called Sharkula. And I want to read you... the blurb.
Okay.
The curse of Count Dracula lives on in shark-infested waters, claiming the lives of a tourist community. A sea hunt for the new species results in monsters, madness, and bloodshed. This great white is putting the bite back into terror, and it has help with the aid of new vampires intent on seeing it survive. I watched the trailer.
There's a trailer as well. You didn't send me that.
Yeah, there's a trailer. It looks like it was filmed on somebody's phone. In a similar vein, the same director has made Amityville in Space. The official blurb reads as follows: the ultimate battle against the Amityville curse begins after the infamous murder house is, wait for it, exorcised from Earth and reappears in outer space in Amityville in space, coming this July. You won't want to miss it.
Can I ask you a question? So, fine, it's been exercised and it's reappeared in space. How is it a threat? Do they send up astronauts to fight the horror, or like
I don't know? If there's a trailer, I will check that out and I will let you know next week.
I'm just wondering if we should watch one of these for the podcast.
Maybe.
But what you did was you sent me, you sent this to me and you went, "What the hell? Period. Take my money." So your incredulity is somewhat offset by how you actually do think that you'd spend money on this.
Actually, I don't know. I think maybe...
And then underneath that you've written, "Oh my god, it looks like someone took a shit and released it as a film." So I think we can say that you're slightly conflicted about this.
Yes, I think so. I think so.
Little bit of movie news.
Indeed.
The Amityville in space thing is something I really want to see.
Production of Scream 6 is slated to begin this summer for a 2023 release.
Oh, nice.
Under the title of, wait for it, and this is real, The Scream.
Oh boy.
Yeah. One of the first screenings of The Batman went viral when moviegoers were given something they hadn't bargained on, as the cinema was invaded by real bats. The video taken by one of those watching the movie was uploaded to Twitter after a fluttering sound was heard and real bats began flying around the room. While there are many movies that have been shown in 4D with special effects enhancing the experience, this was not supposed to be one of them, and completely unexpected to those in attendance.
But was this done on purpose by the cinema, or
I think it was just some
freak?
Yeah.
Really?
I think just some dude decided to release...
Oh, some dude.
I think so, yeah.
I can just imagine the guy sitting in the projector room, sort of like sliding that little window at the top open, like, and just like having a bucket of bats and like opening the bucket and be like, "Fly, my friends, fly, fly!"
You want Cinema 4D? I'll give you Cinema 4D. That was... Movie News. We are going to now talk about The Batman, which is the subject of today's episode. The other night we went to see The Batman, and if you follow our Facebook page, you will find a mini-sode from the field, in which you can see us bickering and being idiots on the way to and on the way from seeing the movie. 1 second. Soda. So, general thoughts. What did you think about The Batman? Did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it very much. I came out of the cinema. It was a very long movie.
Yeah.
And I'm, we're both parents, and so I make it to the end of a day, and I'm very, very tired. So a 3-hour movie is very heavy for me. But as time went by from leaving the cinema, getting home, I got into bed and I was like thinking about it. I fell asleep. I woke up in the morning. I was still thinking about it. And the more I thought about it, I was just like, this is one of my favorite Batman adaptations.
Right.
And we can get into why, and I'm sure in your categories it's going to answer some of those whys. Right. But my general thoughts are that, A, I want to go see it again in the cinema. And
I do as well. Do you want to go?
I really do, but I don't know that I can. And B is that it's something I want to share with people, and I want people to be excited about. Like I felt like not only was it a good Batman movie, but it was also a good movie. Right. And those are some tricky, like when you're dealing with superhero movies or hero movies, it's kind of hard to sort of strike that balance of, this is not only, a spectacle, which it wasn't, right? I mean, it was, but it wasn't one of those. Because there's so many superhero movies now where it's just, special effects and lots of, and I'm also finding now lots of articles online about how much was done practically in this movie.
Which is a lot.
Which is a lot.
Yeah.
And that excites me to watch it again and sort of, wait, that wasn't special effects. Like, that's really cool. So my general vibe is very, very positive. I have a couple of things a couple of things that they didn't ruin it for me at all, but I would like to see a progression of them in the next movie towards a different direction.
So I have a few of those as well.
Your thoughts?
My thoughts on the length was that the first time you're watching it, you're trying to keep track of all the various plot points. and there's a lot going on in terms of, and very similar to the Dark Knight as well. I would say the Dark Knight trilogy, to be honest, because the Dark Knight, I think, is has a lot of sort of twisty-turny sort of plot points and whatnot. But I think it's very much true to the comics as well. That there's a lot of stuff going on with the mob and the different families, and if you're coming into it completely clean and you have no idea about anything, you're just a casual, Bat fan, or your husband or your wife has dragged you along, then you're not going to know who Sal Maroni is. You're not going to know who Falcone is, or the
Falcone, as they correctly say in the movie.
Right. Okay. Falcone sent them to kill you.
Why?
You rattled his cage.
What's this?
Leverage.
Would you like a lozenge?
A lozenge. It's leverage to get things moving.
When did Mary Poppins get cast as Batman?
So
come on now, Joker, into Arkham Asylum's pit spot. That is the amateur village space that I want to see for Batman.
Mary Poppins, y'all. So I'm saying that that in terms of sort of, I found myself shifting in my seat a little bit, mainly because, as you said, I was tired. But my attention was always held. I was always completely immersed. But I felt, as I said to you in the car after we saw the movie, I felt like I was watching a live-action representation of one of the graphic novels or one of the adaptations of the graphic novels. That there's a running theme in all of those sort of more hard-boiled, noirish detective graphic novels, such as The Long Halloween or Year One, etc., that you've got those narration boxes where Batman is narrating and sort of being
in all the Batman comics, it's every single one he's narrating.
Yeah, but you sort of hear it differently when it's when it's very much a noirish novel.
Well, one of the brilliant things about Year One, the graphic novel, is that the boxes are presented as, if I'm not mistaken, it's Year One. They're presented with dates on them,
right?
And it feels like diary entries.
Well, the same thing with The Long Halloween, which.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting that they decided to do that for this movie,
right?
First of all, with the voiceover, that I personally feel that with all of the spoofing of Batman and his voice and all that stuff, that could easily feel trite, right? But it's
voiceover in general is a very dangerous thing to do.
But it's how they present it is that he's keeping a diary because he says the nights are starting to run into each other. And, this is how I kind of keep track of what's going on and keep my sanity. And the thing is that this is a really good representation of the endless struggle that Batman goes through. Like, I was doing a stream yesterday, and one of my friends, very talented streamer, the Rujum, was saying, he's that Batman's not a superhero, his superpower is money, and I was saying it's his willpower, right? Willpower.
Oh, absolutely. That he gets completely pummeled and he still gets up,
and that he at night after night, and he doesn't sleep because he has nightmares about his parents' death, which, by the way, we don't see in this movie. Right, we hear about it, which it's that beautiful thing that they did.
Obviously affected by it. Yeah, it's like
with the Spider-Man introduction in Civil War and then Homecoming. Is that we don't see Uncle Ben's death because we all know that Uncle Ben dies, right? So we know that Thomas Wayne and Martha Wayne are murdered, and that's how Bruce Wayne and that wonderful acknowledgement of the audiences, and then they do talk about it later in the movie,
right?
Where
they don't treat the audience like imbeciles. That's that was something that I really appreciated. But I also think that that it's a kind of style that wouldn't necessarily exist in cinematic Batman if it wasn't for the Nolan trilogy.
Yeah.
And I'll get into that a little bit more later. But as I was saying, the idea of the talking about the runtime, it is a very long movie. But I think if I went to see it again, I wouldn't feel it as much because I wouldn't have to concentrate as much on the plot. I know what happens. I know who's who. And it would and I think a lot of movies are like that for me, that if I'm seeing it for the second time and I know more or less where it's going, and I'm not sort of shocked by certain things, like sometimes you have these twists and you're spending a lot of time, like maybe 10 minutes after something happens, going, did they really just do that? If you know about it and you don't go in surprised, then then you can just enjoy the movie and let it wash over you.
Well, the dual I had a dual kind of thing going on in my head where I was like, this is a really long movie, but at the same time I was going, I don't want this to end, because
exactly.
This is a very...
It needed to be as long as it was. I thought that the runtime was absolutely warranted. And if you think about The Long Halloween, I don't know if you've ever timed yourself reading a graphic novel, but like when you watch the Long Halloween Part 1 and Part 2, the animated DC movie, it comes out to about 3 hours.
But they added a lot of stuff.
But I'm saying that it felt like... Yeah, and this is what I said to you in the car as well. Like, yeah, there's reading the graphic novel, but for me, the animated movies brought the graphic novels to life.
Yeah.
Because what you see in the cinematic Batman is not the same as what you see in the graphic novels.
Yeah.
So that to me was always like Mask of the Phantasm and Halloween and Year One and all of that stuff. And the Killing Joke as well. A lot of people don't like the Killing Joke.
I like it.
I like it. And I'm talking about the animated, the animated movie. And that to me is the purest representation. What Bruce Timm and Paul Dini managed to do with the animated series, and what they've continued to do in their various adaptations of the graphic novels, is distill the graphic novels into a audio visual medium.
I feel like Paul Dini, as a Batman writer, right?
Excellent.
He just gets it, and he gets the fact that a villain needs to have some depth to him. It's not just mustache twirling. Like his adaptation of the Joker is one of my favorites. Of course, there's no Paul Dini Joker without Mark Hamill. And we'll talk about all of that, in the next episode. But I'm just saying that Paul Dini, as a Batman writer, he understands that world, he gets it, and more Paul Dini. And actually, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that they're currently in production on a new animated series with Paul Dini writing it. Like
I'm in the front row as
I saw that news and just the shivers. I'm so excited. I'm sure they won't be able to bring back Mark Hamill. And I think it would be silly to do so now.
I don't know. I think they might.
His voice has changed very much.
He did voice the Joker in The Killing Joke, and that was only a few years ago.
Yeah, he also voiced the Joker in the video games, right?
Yeah, I think that I wouldn't count him out. I wouldn't count either of them out. I think that because of the longevity of the animation medium, because they're only using their voices, there's no limit to how long they can go on. So yeah, I mean, I think both Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill really enjoy doing what they've done in the past, and I think that it's very possible they come back. Anyway, back to the Batman. To me, it jumps from the graphic novels to the animated movies, the Batman.
Yeah.
Right? Nolan's vision is very much Nolan.
Yeah.
And he does use a lot of the comics as inspiration, and I think I think they're excellent. But to me, the Batman really brought those graphic novels to life, and a lot of those elements that we hadn't yet seen. And that's one of the things I really love about Batman in general as a character, and the way that he's been treated in cinema, is that in the same way that the comics kept reinventing him, the movies are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So there's each director that comes along, and this segues into the first category, which is direction. Each director that comes along finds new ways to bring new elements, new for the cinematic Batman, new in general, but also bringing in a lot of things from the graphic novels that we haven't seen before in cinematic Batman. They always have something new to say, something fresh to bring to it, which, like when I first saw The Amazing Spider-Man, I didn't think that it was valid. I didn't think it was necessary to reboot it and start again.
Yeah.
Because what they did was they showed the spider bite again. They showed Uncle Ben's death again.
Yeah.
There's all of that stuff, like starting from scratch, reinventing, etc., etc., etc. But it didn't feel like it was adding anything to the mythos. And here, what you're getting is a new take, but it's still very much recognizably Batman, and I think that's a very unique thing to that character.
Yeah.
And it also means that every single adaptation is valid, because you've got Batman v Superman and Justice League, and I mean Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Yeah.
And if you don't like that representation of Batman, then don't worry, there's another one.
Yeah.
If you're not a fan of Christian Bale's Bat voice, there's Robert Pattinson. If you're not a fan of that, you've got Michael Keaton. If you're not a fan of Michael Keaton, you've got Val Kilmer, etc., etc. There's all of the various colors of Batman throughout the last 80 odd years, are starting to be represented in movies.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. And I think that as a director, Matt Reeves really, really, like, I mean, originally the history of it, for anybody that doesn't know, was that Ben Affleck was originally going to star, write, and direct The Batman. It was called The Batman at the time as well, and the villain was gonna be Deadshot.
Yeah.
And Matt Reeves said that he read it and it was brilliant, and that it was more like a James Bond movie, but he had a different take. He wanted to make a hard-boiled noirish detective movie, and I think that what Matt Reeves did, coming in and reshuffling everything and bringing in Robert Pattinson, it was just a masterstroke, and also Robert Pattinson is a very left field choice.
Yeah,
and I learned a very, very long time ago, we're talking around about 2006 when Casino Royale came out, that I was up in arms like everybody else. I said, that's not James Bond, that's he's blonde, he's muscly, he's short, all that kind of stuff, until I saw the first teaser trailer, and then I was like, okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
And from then on, I have shut my mouth until I've seen, give the guy a chance. And it was the same thing with Heath Ledger. A lot of people went nuts about Heath Ledger. Did you not see Monsters Ball? Did you not see all of the various things like Brokeback Mountain, all the various things that he'd done up until that point, that he was a fantastic actor. And I said, you know what? Trust in Nolan. Heath Ledger's a great actor. We'll see.
Yeah.
And he blew everybody away. And the same thing here with Robert Pattinson. I did not believe that Twilight was his, was his be all and end all.
No, we're way past that now. Like,
of course,
The Lighthouse. Did you see The Lighthouse?
I haven't seen The Lighthouse.
It's good. You should watch it. It's a trip. It's a trip.
Yeah.
It's a little bit trippy, but like he's been in a few things.
Yeah.
Didn't you see him in Tenet?
Yeah, David Cronenberg. He worked with Tenet as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought he was excellent in that. I was like, could he be the next James Bond? Anyway, there was a certain amount of that. I thought he was very suave, but also he was really good at the action.
Yeah.
And when I saw the first trailer, you have that shot of him whipping his head round in the funeral scene, and then jumping on the kid, and like sort of pushing him out the way. That was the point where I said, okay, I was not exactly on the fence. I was like, I'm going to give this guy a chance. Wait till I see something. I have just seen something, and that was excellent.
There was that moment in the first trailer, which has been seen in, I think, 2 trailers, but whatever. It's at the very beginning of the movie, where there's like the guys with the face paint, and he goes, "I'm vengeance," right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And the way that he punches that guy into a pulp, right?
Yeah.
And the way that he uses the taser on one of the other guys, like he just pushes him up against a pillar, and he could have held that taser to the guy for like a second and a half and he would have been out, but he puts it against the guy's neck and he's like in his face, and he's like tasing him, and he holds it for a good like 8 seconds before he lets him fall to the ground.
Yeah.
I was like, this is a Batman who is not only violent, but he's showing that thing that they're always saying in Arkham Asylum is like, they've got a room for him, they've got a padded cell for Batman.
Right, exactly.
He's
very
loses,
much unhinged.
And so the unhinged side of Batman is something that we don't get to see very often, and I felt like that first trailer made me go, I had no thoughts either way about Robert Pattinson. I didn't think he'd be bad. I didn't think he'd be good. I was just like, I want to see. And that trailer made me go,
but
this
also
is
you don't know in advance necessarily what the take on it is.
Yeah.
Because people are going, oh, he's not as muscly as Ben Affleck or Christian Bale, and he's, you know what? But the fact is,
muscular he is.
No, but like at the beginning, before you've seen a frame, you're thinking about him like physically, aesthetically, and I just thought, you know what? That maybe they have an idea of what they're going to do with him. And he really knocked it out of the park. I think he was excellent, and the decision to sort of, instead of putting on a bat voice, he sort of drops his tone down to a whisper. Yeah. And the fact is, he doesn't have to disguise his voice because he's as reclusive as Howard Hughes. Yeah. Nobody really knows Bruce Wayne, at this point in year 2. So yeah, I thought he did an excellent job. What I thought, as opposed to Bale, was that Pattinson had a costume that he filled out and was comfortable in. Yeah. That he wore it as a second skin, which Bale always seemed uncomfortable in his costume, and his jaws always kind of like jutting out, and I never thought that he really wore the costume.
He didn't wear it. Yeah.
He was a fantastic Bruce Wayne, and his Batman was very intense. Mm-hmm. But in terms of like aesthetically, in terms of the costume, it didn't really. It was still that same heavy rubber that Keaton and Kilmer and Clooney were wearing. And now you've got like sort of a thinner leather,
like
for the
body
cowl.
Armor.
Body armor.
Did you see the video I sent you yesterday of the Arkham Knight suit?
I didn't see it. No.
So in the third game in the Arkham series, you get like a new version of the Batsuit, and he puts his hand against the pod that it lands in, and opens it up with his handprint. While wearing gloves, go figure. But it opens up and all of these pieces, Iron Man style, he puts them on and they like slide and slot into place, and it's like a metallic, not metallic, yeah, kind of just like a mechanical armor,
kind of breathes
with different pieces, and it moves, and it there's like this leather weave underneath it, and I wonder if they were maybe influenced by how that looked, because it's very sort of it moves, it feels very protective, I guess is the word,
right?
And
because
like body armor.
If you look at the comics, like it's very much open to interpretation, because a lot of the time in the comics, what you're seeing is basically fabric. Yeah. Like when he takes off the cowl and he's holding it, it's always like drooping like fabric. Yeah. And when his gray, like sort of the torso part of his suit rips, it's like fabric. Yeah. And it's something that's very much open to interpretation by the costume designer. And I think also that's another thing that wouldn't necessarily have come to fruition without the Nolan trilogy interpreting the physicality and the functionality of the suit. Yeah. Which I think is just invaluable for the rest of Batman going forward, in the same way that Zack Snyder took inspiration from that as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah. Direction. I just want to wrap up there was a shot in the trailer that of when Penguin is in the car and he's upside down and he sees Batman walking towards him in the rain with the fire in the background in slow motion. At that point, I looked at it and I went, Matt Reeves, man. Yeah. This guy knows what he's doing. Yeah. This is I think this is supposed to be in Trivia Corner, but I'm going to say it here. Matt Reeves' first movie was The Pallbearer. Oh, really? Yeah, with David Schwimmer. David Schwimmer and Gwyneth Paltrow and Barbara Hershey. Yeah, and I actually quite enjoyed that movie when I was younger. I found David Schwimmer to be basically playing a different version of Ross, and like a different variation of the same character. And I quite liked that movie. There were certain things that were heartfelt. There were certain things that were funny. And then he went on to do Cloverfield and the second two Planet of the Apes movies in the trilogy.
Yeah.
And I think that he was always one to watch, and this movie has now completely solidified him as one of those directors to, like, there's a new Matt Reeves movie coming out. I'm going to see that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of very interesting decisions going on here that sort of show an individuality as a director,
an intimate understanding of not just what makes Batman Batman, but what makes his world Gotham, what makes Gotham Gotham.
Right, but also what makes a good movie.
Yeah. It's being able to take all those things and put them together, and keep that ship on course. Yeah. I cannot imagine how difficult it must be. I don't know how much free reign he was given, but
I'm thinking quite a lot, having seen the movie. Like, it's a 3-hour movie.
Well, you never know whether he had to, like, fight for things and stuff. Like he
probably did. I think everybody does.
You can just feel like there are times when I go and I watch a movie in the cinema and I'm going, there is some confusion in tone. There is some, like, even with Afterlife, right? There is some, that moment where she rips off the
that was the moment that I didn't like.
That is a very confused direction decision. Like,
because it's now very cartoony. And sort of only for the purposes of harking back, as opposed to keeping with the tone of the sort of coming of age, sort of Goonies, I guess, style, kind of an indie trapping of a Ghostbusters movie that Jason Reitman has established. And I'm not sure exactly where that fits in. It doesn't. Whereas I think Matt Reeves keeps the tone very consistent throughout. He's and there are certain decisions that I could see studio execs balking at. For example, when the Riddler takes down Gil Colson in his car and it's completely out of focus. That shot goes on for quite a while.
It makes you uncomfortable.
It makes you uncomfortable, and it's also a very indie idea. It's not a mainstream style shot. And I love that kind of thing. Again, for example, the scene in Casino Royale when Bond is poisoned and he goes into the toilet and everything's kind of hazy, and there's the shutter speed is ramped up, and everything's echoey and whatever. That is a distinct visual choice. An aesthetic choice that is not necessarily something that you've ever seen in a Bond movie before.
It's also a brilliant of evoking a character's feeling visually, making you feel that thing. Like with Bond, that moment where he's like, it's all very hazy, and you said it's like the camera's very, stuttery, jittery, and so I'm feeling dizzy, I'm feeling distressed, and so in this moment where the Riddler's behind him and he's clamping something onto his head, some device which you can see the lights but it's all blurred, in the same way you are Gil, not
Gil
knowing what is being put on him. There's a confusion there and there's a distress there, and I'm not only uncomfortable because of the idea of getting into your car in the dark and having someone sitting in the back seat. Like, I don't know if you do this, but sometimes, if I've parked somewhere like dark and I go there back to the car and, I don't know, I always look in the back seat. Now, I know that you can't really hide
but I will now.
I'm going to hide in your back seat now. No, but
for fuck's sake.
But you can't hide in the back seat of my car because there's 2 car seats, but I still look. It's a weird thing with me. Anyway, so, what was I saying?
Yeah. So you're Gil.
Yeah, so you're put into
subjective
perspective. It's ways of you know how with video games there's always, as I've said, there's an interaction and a way of immersing you in a moment, right? Which is why I love games that are storytelling games like The Last of Us or any of the games that have come out recently that have a very strong focus on storytelling. Those moments that are directed, while some players have a problem with being handheld, if it puts me in that character's moment, that I feel like that's where I've been taken for a ride. So those moments are very, very special. So I agree with you there that the indie decision to do that may not be the obvious decision, but it does something very, very effective. So
that's what it is. It's what's interesting about that, and something that I've never really considered before, is the idea of having a POV being put in a character's shoes that doesn't necessarily mean
seeing it from the character's perspective.
Exactly,
like
having the camera be the eyes of the character. But then in the same way, it brings me to the opening shot of the movie, which is also very unconventional, is that instead of the movie beginning with, for example, an action scene or Batman taking somebody down or the villain doing something. I mean, it is the villain doing something villainous. But you are put into the perspective of the Riddler spying
and stalking his prey.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you can hear his his
breathing, and you've got Ave Maria in the background.
Yeah.
It's a very unconventional, very unsettling opening.
Yeah.
And I remember when the mayor is watching TV,
and you see the light up.
You see the Riddler in the background.
Yeah.
And he comes in and he starts beating the shit out of him and whatever. And that was the moment when you shifted in your chair and you sort of like clapped your hands together, started rubbing them, and you're like, right,
yeah,
I'm in. Let's do this.
So I read a review that said it's kind of scary, and I'm going like. Okay. And that moment where the Riddler is standing behind him, you don't know he's there, and then suddenly the TV sort of like flashes white. You know how like it'll light up the background for a second, and you see him standing there. And I was in it. I was in that moment, and I feel like immersion is a very difficult thing to do in a movie. I feel it's a lot easier in a video game because you are physically connected to what's going on and you're making it happen. But in a movie, to immerse me like that is it's very hard for me. So I was really, really in it. And from that moment onwards, even though I had downed that entire thing of Sprite before the movie started, and about halfway through I was shifting in my seat for different reasons,
right.
I was in it to the end. Like, I was not pulled out of this movie or this atmosphere for a second. I think that is 100% direction and directorial decisions. Yeah,
and the writing.
Yeah.
So in terms, what you were saying about immersion, I also felt that every time Batman Begins, in fact, any of the Dark Knight trilogy, anytime one of those movies starts, you got me. I'm completely in it. And I felt the same in with this movie as well. And I think that in terms of the I agree with you that they say, oh, it's scary, but Matt Reeves really brought in horror elements into this movie, and not just in terms of the Riddler, but also in terms of Batman himself. Batman himself is a horrific figure. And you see that when he's about to beat up on all those face-painted thugs, and you hear the footsteps echoing.
Yeah,
and that it's also what Nolan was trying to do with Batman Begins, which was that whole scene in the docks when Batman's like snatching up thugs and
it's about fear.
It's about fear, and Pattinson's Batman really ramps up the fear in this movie.
They really nailed the thing with at the beginning of the movie, right? The bat signal. Yeah. There's this great sequence at the very beginning where, like, after the Riddler's done his whole thing, the bat signal is up in the sky, and there are 3 crimes happening at the same time. And Batman says, "I can't be everywhere," right? But he says that the signal is not just to let him know that he's needed, but it's to let the villains know, to let the thugs know that he's out there. And there is a moment where that one of them is spray painting the municipality building, right, or something, and he stops for a second and looks into a dark doorway because his imagination is filling in those blanks of what if Batman's in there, right? And there's another crime going on. I don't remember what it was, but also they look off into the dark. And then in the subway with those thugs, they're looking off into the dark and they hear the footsteps.
Right.
One of the thugs looks up at the sky and sees the signal. And That's what and I'm sorry that I keep coming back to the games. I'm going to talk about it in the next episode, and I won't do it too much here. But fear is very much a tool of some of the games, because they get that is what Batman is. It's not just his willpower; it's understanding of how a criminal thinks, and his understanding of the criminal element and how fear is. He talks about it at the beginning of Batman Begins, where he says, I understood the fear before going into a crime and the thrill of pulling it off. And so he operates inside that area of fear.
Right.
And so that moment where he comes out, it's not just Batman's walked out of the shadows. It's a perfect example of him using shadows and fear as a tool to throw them off balance. I love that moment.
But that is what also is a big difference here, is that Nolan's trilogy touches on that.
Yeah.
Especially at the end of The Dark Knight, when he says, I'm going to be I'm going to take the fall for this. I'm going to be the criminal.
Yeah.
But he's always that virtuous, heroic.
Yeah.
Thimble.
You get me. You do.
Yeah. But Pattinson's Batman is borderline.
Yeah, that guy's fucking nuts.
You get the sense that he's so psychologically scarred by his parents' death that he has an inability to connect with people. He's very, very socially awkward.
Yeah.
And
he's very introverted. Yeah.
Very, very introverted. Much more than any of the other Batman. Even Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
Who plays it very weird. But also the revelation for the first time in cinematic Batman that Martha was in Arkham.
Yeah,
that she had various psychological issues.
She was an Arkham.
She was an Arkham, and she was also in Arkham.
Yeah.
And you have that very rich shading of the backstory there that you've never seen before, and who knows, it could be genetic. So even without
he's got a history of mental illness as well.
Exactly. So even without his parents' death, would he be what people would consider quote unquote normal? I'm not sure. But the fact that his parents were murdered in front of him in a dark alleyway when he was 8 years old, sort of broke him and pushed him to the other side. And the fact is that when Pattinson as Batman and Paul Dano as the Riddler are having that conversation in Arkham, and the Riddler sort of assumes that Batman has been working with him the entire time, it's not so far out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
Because Pattinson's Batman is fucked up, man.
He's a hair away from
exactly.
being,
And that is the first time that I've seen that represented in a live action Batman movie, that they really had the balls to take him as far to the edge as possible.
Yeah.
But
that being said, it's never in question that his intentions are, to save the city, and like his intentions are not in any way in question. Which is why
his relationship with Gordon in this movie is so interesting. First of all, I just want to give some props to Jeffrey Wright here, because he took a character also in James Bond as Felix Leiter, a character that's very inconsequential and shows up to help Bond now and again, and he made him a flesh and blood character. And extremely likable as well. And one of the best scenes in No Time to Die is the two of them playing that game in the bar. And you see them for the first time interacting as mates. And here that's another thing that you don't really see, even between Christian Bale and Gary Oldman. You don't get that sense of camaraderie. You always feel that Batman's in control, and Commissioner Gordon always turns around and goes, "Oh, where did he go? I hate it when he does that." And all that kind of stuff. It's always that Gordon is somewhat the butt of the joke. And I love Gary Oldman, and I love his Gordon, and I think he's fantastic. But there's always that tipping of power towards Batman. And you see it very much come to the forefront in the Tumblr scene when when Gordon takes control of the Tumblr, and he's very much the comic relief in that sequence. Whereas here you've got it's almost like a buddy movie. Right, the two of them, the way that they stage that fake fight in the in Gotham PD, And then afterwards he said to me, I thought you were going to pull your punch. And
He's
Batman
like,
says,
I did.
And there's like these moments of levity that in a very, very dark, very, like the entire movie is shot through sheets of rain.
Yeah, I read like a review where someone was complaining that Robert Pattinson's Batman is not funny at all and he doesn't smile once in the movie. And I'm like, first of all, he smiles twice in the movie. And the other thing is that he's not meant to. And I think you've come to the wrong movie. You know, it's like it's very.
But that's what I'm saying. I think that Gordon, being his constant scene partner, he's with him a lot through the movie, and they're working together. And he's very much at thumb drive. Thumb drive. I thought that was brilliant. Yeah, and that is so very much part of the comics.
There's a thing that I see a lot in. It's spoofed in the obviously in the series from the 60s.
Yeah.
But, the whole thing that Batman is the only one who can solve these riddles, right?
Right.
And there's like the whole thing where it's, a ballpoint banana in the 60s. Yeah. It's just nuts. Precisely, Robin. And so there's like, this thing where he goes, thumb drive. He understands. He's like... as I said before, he really understands the criminal element and how they think, and he's also extremely intelligent.
Yeah.
And so those two things put together, he's very, very, he's very much the Batman from the comics, and it makes a lot of sense.
I want to talk a little bit about Paul Dano as the Riddler.
Okay.
Obviously, the inspiration for this character was the Zodiac, and the fact that he is based
even all the way down to his like goodbye.
Right. The mere fact that he's based on a real serial killer is what makes him so chilling. When you look at those Joker sequences in The Dark Knight, when Heath Ledger filmed himself, sort of taking down a victim or whatever, and those are some really, really chilling sequences. Yeah. Those sort of like camcorder sequences. Paul Dano's Riddler takes that and turns it up to 11. It is so chilling and frightening, and it's very much it feels like a horror movie in a lot of those sequences. And the interrogation scene between Batman and the Riddler in Arkham is everything that Blofeld should have been.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why I keep going back to Bond is because Bond villains are an institution, and each Bond movie is an event.
Yes.
And what you expect from a Bond villain is that they be frightening and that they be a formidable foe for 007 to take down.
That's what you expect. But
that's what I want.
It's what you want. But a lot of people want this silly, version of James Bond that has been,
If you want
Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. That's what people want. That's what the mainstream wants.
Right. Also, the villains in the Mission Impossible franchise, aside from Philip Seymour Hoffman, have been a little bit on the
camp side.
Not on the camp side, just a little bit weak.
Yeah.
And I want every writer, director, actor in Hollywood to feast their eyes on Paul Dano's performance, the way that his character is written, and the way that those scenes are directed. That is how you do a villain who is a formidable foe for somebody like Batman.
And unhinged.
Completely unhinged.
There's something about his performance that maybe this is just my interpretation of it, but there's that moment where he's explained to Batman that he's set something up and there's nothing he can do about it. And then he starts singing Ave Maria, right, in the cell, and we start to hear Ave Maria playing as well while he's singing it. And we've heard Ave Maria several times during his crimes. And it makes me wonder if he's hearing Ave Maria, like if his part of his psychosis is the operatic, theatrical, music playing in his head. Like I often think about, how... what is it that's driving this person crazy? What is part of their psychosis? And he's doing that kind of Jesse Eisenberg sort of thing, when he talks, humming to himself in between words. But you know, I wonder if that Ave Maria sort of is in his head, and when we hear it, we're hearing his psychosis. Like it's a nice thought that maybe that's what it said to me. I don't know what it said to you, but I felt there was a significance to it. Right. You know, you and I also had a disagreement about the significance of him saying Bruce Wayne like over and over again to Batman, because you were saying, you know, you don't. It's not clear whether he knows.
But when you mentioned it, it's very possible that he was tormenting him, and he was saying, you know, that it's not relevant. That he knows that he's Bruce Wayne. I was
talking about one of the graphic novels that I have called Death in the Family, where Joker kidnaps all of Batman's, you know, sort of kids, as it were, and he, you know, there's this moment where it's sort of revealed that the Joker had gotten into the Batcave, and all of them are like really angry with Batman that he didn't tell them this. And he says he doesn't know your identities. And then later on in the graphic novel, he says to Alfred, I went to go and visit him as Bruce Wayne in Arkham. And I dropped all pretenses. And I said, I found this. And he shows him the Joker card that he left in the Batcave. And, you know, he sort of asks... I don't remember the exact words, but there's sort of like he's saying, you know, I think you know who I am. And Joker is being all comatose and not saying anything and completely ignoring him. And he says to Alfred, he doesn't care. He doesn't care who Batman is. He doesn't care who all of you guys are. He only cares about Batman because he's obsessed with Batman, and without Batman, there's no game, right? And I think that was also the Paul Dano thing, is that he's, you know, the Riddler is like, he's saying, I'm smart enough that I've figured out who you are. I know it's you, but it doesn't matter, because who you are doesn't matter. You, Batman, are the one I care about right now. Right. And that's what I understood from the scene, but I really want to see it again just to see if I'm wrong. Yeah,
but I think it works on a couple of levels, but it also depends how Batman reacts to it. How does Batman take it? Because I think that there's a slight note of confusion or relief. Yeah. You know, when he says Bruce Wayne, he hasn't blah blah blah, meaning. I thought you knew, you know, and then he kind of does an about turn.
But when he's saying Bruce Wayne, there's that acknowledgement that Bruce Wayne and Batman are two completely different people, right? And there's always that discussion about Bruce Wayne being the mask, right? That Batman is the identity, is the real.
I think in a way the Riddler is speaking to him on his level, and sort of acknowledging the idea of a split personality, because Batman is here, Bruce Wayne isn't,
right?
And it's just very interesting. I didn't realize exactly how much we'd have to talk about with this movie. It's like
there's depth.
There's so much of it. So in this category, there are a few more people I want to talk about here. There's Colin Farrell as the Penguin.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Selena Kyle. Zoe Kravitz as Selena Kyle, Catwoman. And I want to talk about John Turturro as Falcone, or Falcone. So first off, Colin Farrell as the Penguin. If you hadn't told me that it was Colin Farrell,
exactly
I would not have known.
Yeah.
Okay, it's somewhat of a backhanded compliment when you say this actor is unrecognizable in this role, because 9 times out of 10, when people say that, they're complimenting the makeup artist.
Yeah.
Okay? They're complimenting the prosthetics.
Which are very, very, very good.
They are very, very good, and they're seamless.
But it's also in his performance, like
Colin Farrell's performance, everything. He is completely transformed, and he said that the makeup and the costume really helped him to do that. But he himself, it's a testament to how good he is as an actor that he completely and utterly disappears into that role.
There's a thing about Oswald Cobblepot that in his portrayals in different mediums. In the animated series, he's a socialite, you know, he's like, oh yes, my befeathered friend, you know, he'll use like very high language. He sounds
like Ronnie Corbett, right? And he behaves like an aristocrat.
Exactly, and that's to sort of offset the oddness of his appearance. Danny DeVito and Tim Burton's adaptation of the Penguin is very disgusting. It's very sort of, you know, bits coming out of his mouth. Yeah. He's been living under the sewers, like he is sewage, like it's right.
But I think in terms of what you were just saying about the animated series, about that sort of sort of offsetting his weirdness. I think that's a sort of turned up version of what Danny DeVito did, because there is a section of the movie when he's running for mayor where he is that. He's a socialite. He behaves like an aristocrat. He behaves like sort of the Prince of Gotham, etc., etc.
But he's still speaking in that
right.
You know.
Underneath that, he's animal.
Yeah, and so in the comics, there's also the adaptation of him being a this mob boss, and which is very, very close to what we get in the Batman, and so there's a wonderful balance that's struck between him being a mob boss, him being this sort of malformed, weird looking. He has bird-like. His nose is very pointed, very beaky. His gait, his walk is very waddly and penguin-like. He's indulgent. He's obviously he calls everybody sweetheart, because he's he thinks he's on top of everything. And though that, again, I keep on saying the word balance, there is a wonderful understanding of all of the elements that make these characters, and then those things that make it different for this version. And it's done with the Riddler, it's done with Batman, it's done with Selina Kyle, and it's definitely done with this. And Colin Farrell's performance is extremely knowledgeable. I feel like he understood what it was that makes Oswald Cobblepot unpalatable to look at. Or Oz, as they call him in this one. He's hard to look at. He's hard to listen to, but for some reason you're still doing it.
Yeah,
exactly. It's
another example of how how they managed to bring in a character that's already been realized on the screen and approach it from a fresh perspective. Exactly. I'm really looking forward to seeing more Colin Farrell.
Yeah.
Apparently, there's going to be a TV series on HBO Max that they're going to do as a sort of a Penguin TV series. There's supposed to be an Arkham TV series as well.
That's going to be more horror-like, apparently.
Yeah. I love the fact that that this movie is a new sort of cinematic universe, as it were.
Yeah.
But that it's also spawning more.
Yeah.
From the same universe. Selina Kyle, Zoe Kravitz. Also, it's a character that's been realized on the screen twice before.
Yeah.
You've got Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Returns. You've got Anne Hathaway in The Dark Knight Rises. And in this movie...
Johnny's favorite thing is the way that she gets on the bike.
Yeah, all right. I find Anne Hathaway extremely sexy. What do you want from me? I'm a man, damn it.
You have blood running through your veins.
And other things.
Continue.
Yeah.
No objectification on this podcast, please.
Yes. Zoe Kravitz manages to bring in a lot of elements from the comics, especially in her relationship with Batman, that we haven't necessarily seen before.
Yeah.
In Batman Returns, Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman is very much on the side of the baddies.
Yeah.
And she somewhat crosses over here or there. There's definitely, because of her relationship as Selina Kyle with Bruce Wayne, there's definitely some faltering there. And at the end of the day, she murders Max Schreck in order to cross over to the side of the good guys. In this movie, Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman is very much out for herself and her lover.
She's got her own. Yeah. It's her lover. She's bisexual.
I mean, it's okay. I wanted to talk about that for a second, just as a segue.
If I've said it, yeah.
Yeah. It's very much implied that Catwoman Selina Kyle is bisexual in this movie, and I read quite a few reviews where people were disappointed that wasn't explored more. Now, I talked last week about the sitcom Schitt's Creek.
Yeah,
and you haven't seen that yet, but I just want to say something about Eugene Levy's son, Dan Levy. Writes and stars in the show with Eugene Levy playing his dad. Dan Levy is gay in real life, and in the show he's portrayed as bisexual. He has a relationship with a female co-star, and he has and his main love interest is a man, right?
Okay.
And what is wonderful about the writing in Schitt's Creek is that they don't sort of present it to you as, hey, look, we're showing diversity. It's a gay relationship. Look, everybody, it's a man and a man being together. It's portrayed as any other relationship that would be portrayed on the screen.
I'm really curious about how these people would like it to be portrayed or explored more.
Right.
Because her entire motivation for the whole movie is to look for and then later on avenge her lover. And that's her entire... And then she's sort of conflicted because she is
falling in love with Batman.
I don't want to say falling in love with, but I want to say attracted to. There's an attraction to his willpower.
The chemistry between them is very sizzling.
Yeah. And so there's this, this... I felt like it was definitely explored enough. I feel like it doesn't have to be the central theme of the movie.
Right. They don't put too fine a point on it that it is a sexual or a romantic relationship. She calls her baby. You know, she's basically risking her life for her.
She's distraught when she's
distraught. Yeah. It's enough. I think that if you're going to turn around and say, hey, look, everybody, this character's bisexual. Look at us representing. You're doing a disservice to that character, to that storyline, and to the community that they're representing. I think that the way that it's presented is just pitch perfect.
Yes, and also her relationship, quote unquote, with Batman, is very much how it is in a lot of media and comics. Like,
they're just kind of like meeting.
Yeah, like there's
ships in the night kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's very I often find that the whole Vicky Vale thing is problematic for me, and it bugs me a little bit because Bruce Wayne can have his his flings and his relationships, but he doesn't have time, or he can't allow himself to be distracted by real long-term relationships. And so where Selina Kyle and Catwoman sort of come in is this very interesting, I want to say, as you said, that this meeting point of this woman is dangerous. She's not criminal in the way that the other criminals are criminal. She doesn't have that same level of... She's not psychotic.
They don't give her the cat burglar attribute in this movie.
Yes,
because
they do in she does like break into a safe and she is stealing stuff.
What I'm talking about is the sort of robbing the museum of the crown jewels or all that kind of stuff.
She's not there yet.
She's not there yet, and I like that. It's you're showing a development of that character.
Yeah. Which is great. The great thing about this being set in year 2 is that these characters have room to grow into what they're going to be. I felt like her portrayal by Zoe Kravitz was,
pitch perfect.
Just every syllable pronounced. That there's pain, there's sultriness, there's mystery, there's all those things that you want, and she feels like a woman who's struggling with her past,
right?
And also very strong and in control. And there's that balance. Again, balance. There's so much wonderful balance that's happening in this movie that I felt was really missing from Selina Kyle's portrayal by Anne Hathaway. As much as we like her stepping over onto the bike, she's and again, like a great portrayal, but it was she had more of that cat burglar acrobatic thing going on in The Dark Knight Rises, but I didn't feel like she was a particularly good Catwoman. I thought she was a good Selina Kyle.
I thought she was I didn't think that she was a bad Catwoman necessarily, but I did think that as much as I like that final shot in The Dark Knight Rises, I do, because I think that closing off the trilogy, Batman should have his happy ending at least once.
Once in cinema, yeah.
Yeah. I did feel that that there was a lack of development of their relationship, that there was no precedent for them to be together at the end of the movie. Whereas Pattinson and Kravitz, first of all, Batman teams up with Gordon, and he teams up with Selina Kyle at various points in the movie out of necessity.
Yeah,
and I love each of those scenes where it's a buddy movie with Gordon, and then it's a buddy movie with Catwoman, and he's communicating with her through her eyepiece, through the contact lens, and those scenes are, you know, that there's this wonderful scene where you know, she's taken out her contact lens, she said, you know, fuck you, I'm not you know, like, you can go to hell kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then later on she contacts him using the contact lens, and it's kind of like those scenes where you have a young couple in love kind of texting each other in the middle of the night. And and you know, obviously it's much more complicated than a young couple in love because their relationship is so multi-layered, but I love that. I thought it was very sweet.
Yeah.
And then when he gets knocked down at the end of the movie in Gotham Stadium, what's it called? Gotham Square Garden.
Yeah.
Which is
he gets
not a reference to anything
shot.
in reality at all.
He gets shot by a like point blank by a shotgun
Right.
blast or a rifle blast.
And the way that she brings him back is just beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's like
He injects himself with something that could be
Venom. Yeah.
Or this universe's version of that, which is someone else said it was maybe the drug that's been on the street, the droplets or drops, whatever it's called. And the fact that he's you know, he sees that she's in trouble, and he sort of, you know, injects himself with this thing and then beats the shit out of this guy is and yeah, I really
there's a sweetness within that like being able to balance somebody who is completely socially shut down and doesn't know how to have relationships, etc., that even in the guise of Batman, where he is totally unhinged, he is able to form these relationships with Gordon and Selina Kyle, and I just and it was, they were able to make it heartfelt.
Yeah.
Which is also a testament to Michael Giacchino's score. But you've got that theme of like, which repeats and repeats and repeats.
And they managed to turn that into a hero theme, believe it or not, in several places.
But also like bringing in these wonderful kind of melodic themes that sort of underscore that relationship. And I found it to be quite emotional, which is not necessarily something you'd expect from something as bleak and as dark as this movie kind of presents itself to be.
Yeah.
John Turturro as Falcone.
Or Falcone.
What did you think of him?
Do you know what? I really haven't given him much thought. I feel now that you're asking me, I feel like his performance was really good.
I thought he was very slimy in a really good way, that he was able to lie to Bruce's face.
Yeah, and you believe him. You believe him. And here's the thing, is that in my brain, I'm going, Thomas Wayne
would never.
But there has been a video game adaptation, a Telltale adaptation, which is kind of like a sort of point and click Batman game, a modern point and click, where, you know, it's revealed that the Waynes were actually corrupt Gotham socialites, and everything that you thought you knew. A lot of things in the Telltale Batman are very different. So, you know, there was a moment where they were, and I was like, oh my god, are they doing this? Right? Where if and the thing is that I would be okay with it if they did that, because it would add so much more to his trauma. But I really like that he's lying to him. He's saying to him, you know, that you know, he asked me to do this thing, and then Alfred says to him, your father never asked him to kill someone. He went to him and he made a mistake, but he never asked him to do that, and he was distraught by that. And then there's this thing where Bruce is like, okay, so my father was this intact, you know, sort of soul in the end. Falcone is in my vision of him from comic books, very different to how he was portrayed in this movie. He's very much more like the Godfather in sort of The Long Halloween,
right?
And I felt here that he was just a very, like you said, slimy and untouchable entity who's always in his club and he never leaves, and you know, it's a very different portrayal. And I actually that's not a bad thing, and I really liked it. But it was one of the things in the movie that I felt was a little weaker. Was his involvement in things, for him being the hinge, the crux of that mystery of who is the informant. I felt like there should have been a bit more meat on that bone, but that's just my opinion.
Okay.
But how much are you going to put into a 3-hour movie?
Right. No, well,
my
my personal feeling was that I thought that he approached it from a slightly different direction, and you have those characters in Scorsese movies that are really charming, but you feel like they could run a knife in you any second.
Yeah.
And I felt that he was that. I felt that he was dripping with menace, but at the same time he was incredibly charming and appealing. And I liked him. I liked him a little bit more than Tom Wilkinson. I thought that Tom Wilkinson is a little bit more one note.
I don't like his Falcone at all.
Yeah.
It's the difference. We'll call that one Falcone and this one Falcone, and then we know who we're talking about.
Right. Okay. There was one more character that I wanted to talk about, and that is the Joker, who makes an appearance right at the end of the movie. A lot of people have criticized this scene. I personally think that it's okay. I think that I understand Matt Reeves' decision to leave it in because it sort of interacted with another scene in the movie that followed it or preceded it. I can't remember which.
The scene in question preceded it, and it was a meeting where Batman went to go and talk to a killer who he's put away previously and wanted to sort of Hannibal Lecter, get into the mind of a killer.
No, I'm talking about the scene, the finished scene that is in the movie that had some sort of contrast to another scene that's sort of close to it somewhere. And I can't remember exactly which one it was, but it kind of informed the idea of I think Batman.
You're saying that when Selena Kyle leaves, that Matt Reeves was
that it's never going to change and it's never going to be over.
Worse and
right, that's what it was. Yeah.
I thought you meant the scene that was cut.
And then no, the scene that was cut is gonna appear on the Blu-ray. Apparently, and I'd be very, very interested to see it. My personal feeling about any of that is that I think the Joker has been done to death, and that maybe they should retire him for a couple of movies. That I would be quite happy if he didn't make an appearance in at least the next movie.
There's so much meat in the Rogues Gallery, right? That Batman's villains. Even taking a character like the Riddler, who is generally thought of as one of the weaker sort of, he's very prominent in a lot of, but you could do so many things with all these characters. Forget Two-Face, right, and forget you could do the ventriloquist, who is a mob boss who has there are so many things that you could do with that. There's so much meat on the bone there. They could be dealing with Mr. Zaz, the guy who murders women he just murders people, and every time he murders someone he cuts his skin as a he has these 5-bar gates tallying the score of how many people he's killed. And there's so many things that you could do with these just having a serial killer on the loose. And the Joker, while being the most compelling of the villains, it's just there's too many, and I've got Joker fatigue.
Yeah.
And as much as I'm always like, ooh, how are they going to do the Joker? After Snyder's Joker, which was extremely disappointing, and even seeing him in the Snyder cut didn't do it for me. I want a break. Heath Ledger's Joker was incredible and a wonderful adaptation and portrayal of this character, and the whole licking his scars thing is great. And I really didn't need this scene. It's in there, it's fine. I would like it if they didn't bring him into the next one. I would like it if the next movie
they could leave it as an Easter egg.
Yeah, or he could be in the third one, But I would. He's not the Joker yet. Apparently, he's the guy who will become the Joker, and I really like Matt Reeves' description of how he's got that thing from The Man Who Laughs, where he just can't stop smiling. His face is constantly frozen in a smile. I think that's really interesting, but just un petit point, a little bit. I think I just said peas, but just a little space, a little bit, because it's so much, and I can't take it anymore. I'm going to go insane and take you with me.
Right. So Shasha asked a question that you asked me, and then said, "Don't answer now. No. Wait until the podcast. It is now that time." Is The Batman better than The Dark Knight? Why did she choose specifically The Dark Knight? Was she talking about the movie The Dark Knight or the trilogy?
She's talking about the movie The Dark Knight, and I believe that she first of all, I think that her opinion is actually that it's the best one of that trilogy, but it's widely thought of as the best. Okay.
So the answer to that question, in my opinion, is that it's not that simple.
Which was also my answer to her.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
It's an entirely different take. And the fact is that you've got these... Okay, if you want to pit these two movies together, or you want to pit the Batman against the trilogy is of such high quality that I wouldn't put one above the other. I would say this is this Batman, and this is this Batman. Mm-hmm. So... I mean, I'll gladly compare elements within, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't say that the Batman overtakes the Dark Knight trilogy or the Dark Knight, and I wouldn't say that the Dark Knight overtakes the Batman. They are two completely different takes, while at the same time retaining certain elements that are very similar. Mm-hmm. But because they are of such high quality, I can't sort of say that one's better than the other.
Yeah. I think you're going to get a lot of people having this argument, and I think that there are going to be some people who are going, "No, Heath Ledger's Joker forever," and you're going to have.
I think that that they can exist together. Yeah. Also, the thing is, as I said earlier, Nolan's trilogy in a lot of ways brought Batman down to earth and blazed a trail, and you wouldn't have this movie without Nolan's trilogy.
Yeah.
It very much sort of informed a lot of the fundamentals of Gotham, and a lot of the groundedness of the Batman. So
I have problems with The Dark Knight. I think that as a Batman story, it's very good. And I think that obviously Heath Ledger's Joker is fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the be-all, end-all version of the Joker. I think that there have been amazing adaptations of the Joker, and I think there have been bad adaptations of the Joker. I actually feel that the Joker from DiMaggio, what's his name? The John DiMaggio who played the Joker in Under the Red Hood. His Joker is spine-tinglingly horrible. There's just the way that at the beginning, after he's finished beating Robin with a crowbar, and he puts the hood over his head and he goes, "Tell the big man I said hello." Right? There's something in the delivery that's extremely right. And there's that thing where Jason Todd confronts Batman and he says, "Why on earth is this death-worshipping piece of garbage still alive?" Right? And the Joker realizes that there's this reunion happening, and he's just giggling, and he goes, "Let's get a picture. First you and the kid, then me and the kid, then one with the crowbar." Right? And that portrayal is extreme. So what I'm trying to say is that if you wanted to compare the movies based off of villain portrayals, you can't do it. It's too different, whatever. My problem with The Dark Knight is the absolute ruining of the wonderful work that was done in Batman Begins on the portrayal of Gotham City. Gotham City in Batman Begins is extremely dark and yellow and dirty, and there's the Narrows, and there's smoke everywhere, and it's this griminess and gothic nature, which I feel is very, very necessary. And then in The Dark Knight, you've got this, sort of New York-looking skyscrapers, tall city, and I think that, you can have that part of Gotham with those, but he didn't show that, from that opening sequence with the bank robbery. It just looks like a completely different setting, and so I do feel that with The Dark Knight, there are a lot of problems with it. But if you, in answer to Shosha's question, where she said to me, which one did you like more? I agree with you. I think that they are two completely different worlds, and I'm happy with them existing side by side as two completely different adaptations of the same character. Definitely both of them are better than anything that's come before. I love Tim Burton, and I love his Batman, but for me, these two adaptations, and I think in some ways, this one that we've just seen is slightly above Nolan's Batman for me, just personally, because of the way that Gotham is presented. I feel that Gotham is a character in itself. I hate it when people say that. The city, the Titanic itself, is a character in the movie. That sort of rubbish makes me want to, eat my own bottom and then shit myself out. But, I feel like...
Wow, that is very specific and very graphic.
And also doesn't really work if you think about what I just said. Really, in order for that to happen, my bottom has to eat me and then shit me out. But whatever, that's not the point. The thing I was... Sorry, mother. But my whole thing is that Gotham is a character, and in this movie, it is. It really is. So I kind of feel like it's an unfair question to ask. Please don't ask it of me. I don't want to answer it. But if you really had to make me choose, open mouth scream, Meryl Streep, I'd have to choose the Batman simply because of how consistent its tone is. But when the sequel comes out, that is what's going to
solidify.
Need to revisit this. And all of the series, and all of the series as well that are going to come out, if they can match that grimy, dirty, consistent tone of buildings that are clean, like the Gotham Square Gardens and the municipality building, but then the dirty side of it where everything's really grimy, like the subway and the under the the sort of club where all the mafia bosses hang out, where it's very sort of Gotham and seedy, and in one of the comics, in many of the comics, in one of them, Batman is saying the city it's got rot. And that rot is everywhere, and it's growing. And he's not just talking about criminals. He's talking about how, the city itself reflects the state that it's in. And Batman Begins has that. The Batman has that. But The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises does not have that.
Okay.
And that's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
Sorry about the butt shitting thing. That was unpleasant for all of us, I'm sure.
Okay, we're gonna end this episode very soon. But before we do, I want to take a little trip to Trivia Corner.
All right.
There's not a lot here because it's a new movie, but
do the jingle.
There's a couple of things here. Trivia Corner. So, Robert Pattinson's screen test before he was officially cast took place while he was in rehearsals for shooting Tenet in Los Angeles in May 2019. Mm-hmm. Pattinson had to lie to Christopher Nolan about it, but Nolan, who was no stranger to Batman and Warner Brothers, immediately figured it out.
Not surprising.
Pattinson says, "It's funny because Chris Nolan is so secretive about everything to do with his movies. Then I had to be really secretive about Batman stuff, so I had to lie to Chris about having to go for a screen test. I said I had a family emergency, but as soon as I said it's a family emergency, he said, 'You're doing the Batman audition, aren't you?' When Pattinson was told that he won the role of Batman a day before principal photography for Tenet began, he was surprised that Nolan also knew and congratulated him, although Pattinson hadn't told anybody about it yet."
Right.
Robert Pattinson's Bruce Wayne is inspired by Kurt Cobain.
Mm-hmm.
Writer-director Matt Reeves was listening to Nirvana when he wrote the first act. He says, "That's when it came to me. Rather than make Bruce Wayne the playboy version we've seen before, there's another version who had gone through a great tragedy and become a recluse. Kurt Cobain had a relationship with fame where being famous was not his goal. He loved music, but the idea of being famous for music was the double-edged sword for him. And that made me think of Rob Pattinson, actually, because Rob is a very private person himself and doesn't necessarily like the part of being recognized everywhere as an actor."
Yeah.
Interesting. This is the first version of Batman to directly address the black eye makeup under the cowl. In previous versions of the film, the makeup just disappeared when Bruce took his mask off.
Yeah.
Batman Returns, for example.
Hello.
Matt Reeves says, I just love the idea of taking off the mask, and under that there's the sweating and the dripping and the whole theatricality of becoming this character.
Yeah.
The movie's working title was Vengeance. Mm-hmm. Robert Pattinson is a big fan of Batman since he was a child and saw every previous iteration of the character in the cinema on opening weekend. That's nice to know. I like that.
Yeah.
When shooting began after months of lockdown due to COVID-19, Pattinson tested positive after only 1 day back on set.
Yeah.
Director Matt Reeves didn't want to risk getting COVID too and transformed himself on set into a burrito, wearing a mask, gloves, a head covering, and scuba diving goggles. Kind of reminds me of the Riddler, actually.
Yeah.
Reeves said, you couldn't see my face, and this is the way the actors saw me for the rest of the movie. I was like this ridiculous, hermetically sealed creature. It was absurd. Matt Reeves and Tim Burton are the only filmmakers to have helmed films in both the Planet of the Apes and Batman franchises.
Oh, that's an interesting piece of trivia. I never thought of that. That's true.
Yeah. There we go. And that was Trivia
Corner.
Drop page. Did you enjoy this? If you did, stay tuned next week for our follow-up episode on Batman in general.
Yeah. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow us on Facebook. What's Our Seat Number, the Facebook group. And please comment on our posts. Let us know what movies you'd like us to do in the future, what you thought about this episode. You can also give us ideas for future episode cover art. If I'm going to be doing that from now on, that would be really cool to get some opinions from you guys. If you want to see some of the cover art being done between episodes, then you can follow me on Twitch, CygrossArt, and I will be drawing some of those covers live. We also have a Twitter, don't we? Do we tweet? We don't really tweet.
We have a Twitter. We don't really tweet, but we have a Twitter.
If you come, we'll tweet.
Yes.
If you let us know that you're there, we'll do it. Let us know you're alive.
Because I was told mistakenly that if I tweet it, they will come, and they didn't.
Hey! Anyway, thanks so much for listening. We really hope you enjoyed The Batman, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. Please let us know what you thought of the movie in the comments on the Facebook page, and we will see you in the next episode where Johnny will turn into a bat.
I'm Batman.
Oh, it's happened. Never mind. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
What's our seat number?